Bill.
Pleasure to be here.
I've never met you before, so this should be.
We have not met.
Yes.
Should be.
I've heard a lot about you in terms of.
You shouldn't believe those lies.
Well, I don't know. The sources are pretty reputable. So.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I like to hear that.
So what I thought we'd do today is start talking a little bit about your life, where you originated from. I read a little bit about you on Wikipedia. I think you're originally from California,
From Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, California.
Hollywood, particularly, North Hollywood, but I grew up as part of the Hollywood community. My parents were in show business. My dad was an actor, my mom was a dancer in films, and who retired when she started having children. But I grew up in that Hollywood milieu.
And your father?
My father was an actor. And
during what years?
He was best known as a radio personality in the 30s and 40s, and even into the 50s. And then when TV came in, he was on TV. But he also made movies, you know, from the 30s into the 50s. He died in the late 50s.
Oh, okay.
We grew up in that whole, you know, that whole environment.
Is that
kind
where
of show business community? It's an area called Toluca Lake in part of North Hollywood, California, and it's an enclave community. It's all like musicians, actors, artists, you know, artists of all kinds, but
so you grew
mainly
up
actors and people in that industry.
Wow. Okay. So
And
this
it's
is
right in that area where there were, you know, many, you know, or several studios. Disney studio was there, Warner Brothers, Universal. You know.
So you were exposed very early to this.
Well, yes, everybody I knew was from that milieu. All my friends and all my parents' friends were, you know, actors or singers or dancers or, you know,
Something
musicians.
creative, yes.
Yeah. No, it was a creative atmosphere.
Yeah.
I thought everyone, you know, everyone in the world was kind of like us.
Right.
You know, I didn't figure it out until much later.
Right.
Actually, I was about 35, I think, when
you figured
no,
that
I'm kidding. But it was kind of required in the family that we be literate and, you know, have a cultural literacy as well.
Very good.
And it took very well, I think, with my sisters. With me, not so much. You know, I was kind of a knucklehead. I just wasn't a good student, good music student, which is really funny because now, of course, I teach music in college level.
How funny it's come full circle, right?
Yeah, but that's because I discovered, you know, my passion for music and for the drums and for percussion, and it all kind of led to, you know, a bunch of different stuff. But my sisters were wonderful. My two younger sisters are deceased. My older sister married a very famous musician. She married a couple of musicians. Her second and last husband was Phil Woods, the great saxophone player who just passed away. Yeah. And who I worked with, you know, in his group for over 40 years. But I met him through my sister. She brought him to my house.
Oh, nice.
So people say, how did you ever end up working with the great Phil Woods? Says, well, my sister brought him over, and I kind of liked him, so I thought we'd, you know, start a group. It's kind of the truth.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your parents, are they originally from Los Angeles area?
They were from the Bay. They were from the Bay Area.
Okay.
My dad was from Oakland, and my mom grew up in Palo Alto. Though I think my mom was born in Mississippi, in Gulfport, Mississippi.
Oh.
And then moved, as a very young child, moved to the Bay Area, to Palo Alto. And my dad was born and raised in Oakland, California. But they met in Los Angeles. My mom was a contract player, what they used to call a starlet, but she was a dancer. She was in, if you see old movies from the 30s where they have the chorus, the dancers, like the Busby Berkeley movies, she's in those. You know, she's one of the chorus, and they all look alike, and they're very good-looking, you know, women. And she was doing this since she was 13, 14 years old. In the Depression,
wow.
She was, you know, I've seen her old contracts from when she was, you know, starting out in films, and she was still in high school getting A's and was doing movie work. And
her parents supported her in this.
She supported the family. I mean, she was making $175 a week in 1936. You know, it was a lot of money at that time. And my dad started in radio right out of high school in Oakland. He started sweeping up the station, and then he started doing the news, and then he started doing sports, and then he had a really great voice, so he ended up doing more and more stuff. And he ended up becoming best known for working with George Burns and Gracie Allen and Bob Hope.
In the radio.
In
yeah,
radio.
For TV.
And then
yeah.
at the same time, he got signed to Warner Brothers, so he's doing movies. You know, he's on a contract player with Warner Brothers. So he basically never saw the guy. I mean, he was like working all the time.
Wow.
But you know, he was very well known, very successful. He died in 1958. He was quite young, and
From
but
what?
you know, it was a heart attack. Probably overworked. You know, stressed out. But he was, you know, he was great, and he was extremely well known, and that was, you know, kind of the thing. And everybody that we knew in our neighborhood or in the business were friends.
Did you ever meet Gracie and Alan?
Oh, sure.
You met them.
Oh, sure. I mean, they would be guests at our house, and it's like maybe a lot of people who are pretty iconic these days would be you know, guests at the house. And they had a lot of parties and dinner parties, and Dad had like a kind of group, a poker game with a bunch of out of work actors, but all got people who became very well known later on, or had been well known, or were on their way up or their way down.
Right.
And it was kind of an endless list
Yeah.
of people. But the people that we knew the best in the neighborhood were Frank Sinatra. He was a very good friend of Dad's. We spent a lot of time at his house, and it was not far away. And Bill Holden and his wife, Brenda Marshall,
Yeah.
and
You see a lot
Gordon
of
and
these.
Sheila McRae.
You see a lot of their movies now on TCN,
Oh, sure.
Turner
I
Classic
know.
Movies. Yeah.
I keep thinking I got to go to one of their festivals sometime, because I have the whole like Hollywood profile.
Wow.
I mean, I knew all those people. I mean, I grew up around them.
Fascinating.
And I didn't think anything much about it
Right.
at the time.
When you were young.
Bing Crosby lived right down the street. I mean, you know, there was a lot of people in that
Yeah,
area.
yeah.
It's funny, if you look up Toluca Lake, it's like a really funny
Toluca
little
Lake. I'll
enclave, you know,
have to-
neighborhood, like very, very concentrated showbiz
Okay.
thing. And
Were
I
you
got-
always a percussionist? Or?
Well, I started on piano originally as a child, and then saxophone. It's kind of like a failed saxophone player, because as much as I loved it and wanted to play saxophone, I just wasn't ever very good. Meanwhile, I was fooling around with the drums, and I kind of had a gift for it. You know, I mean, it's something that you hit. You know, you don't really have to
Right.
know anything to make a sound. Anyway, I kind of taught myself to play the drums at the same time, and it just developed out of that. I had a single-minded devotion to the music, and I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be one of those people. I would see these friends of my dad's. He knew a lot of musicians, and he loved jazz. And when he discovered that I loved it when I was 12, 13 years old, he started taking me out to clubs, and I met a lot of musicians because, I mean, the guy basically knew everybody. You couldn't go any place with my dad where he didn't know like every musician, half of the people in the room. You know, he was a very well-known guy, and he, you know, was well-known in the scene.
Right.
So,
So you had a very early exposure to that
oh yeah,
scene.
and that through, you know, life at home, which included music, daily music, not lessons, but I did have music lessons, but you know, daily exposure to music, a huge record collection. You know,
Of all kinds of-
really comprehensive.
Wow.
Yeah, jazz, classical, Broadway shows.
So when you left, did you go to college at all?
No, I left high school in 1959. I was about a month short of graduation, and I had a dust-up with one of my teachers, and he wasn't going to let me graduate. So I essentially left.
What was the dust-up about? I'm curious.
Well, I'd rather not go into that.
You don't want to share.
It was a, you know, it was a knuckleheaded move on my part, but I had already decided that what I wanted to do.
You knew.
You know, that time my dad was gone, my mom was, you know, not having a real easy time of it, and I wasn't not particularly helpful. But I realized, you know, I knew what I wanted to do, and I was just going to do it.
So what did you do? You
Well, what I
left
did
high
was
school and-
I dropped out of high school. I literally left a month before graduation in, you know, 1959, spring of 1959, and I got a job at in the parking lot at NBC, because my dad and mom had connections there, and they knew the president of NBC. I think my mom actually called him and said, "Look, the kid's just you know, dropped out of high school. He's not doing anything. Give him a job." So I ended up in the parking lot of NBC, and I worked there for 2 years, from 59 to 61. And then in
Were you doing music at that time? Or
I was
playing?
doing music, but I had the day job, which was the parking lot job, which was a great job because a lot of musicians who I wanted to meet would come in to record or do TV there. And so, I would just introduce myself to people. So, I have like all your records. And I met a lot of people that way. And they was like, who's the weird parking lot attendant who like knows all about jazz?
Wow. Wow.
But I
That's great.
eventually left there when I had like a conflict when I was about 19. It was like 17 to 19. And then I had a conflict with, I had some offers to do some musical work, and they didn't want to give me time off, so I quit. And a little concerning because, I hadn't really been making my living as a musician.
Right.
But it worked out okay. So since that time, I've never looked back. I'm 74 now, and I've been making my living, as a musician since I was 19.
Not an easy thing to do. So you did this, you took a big risk. I mean, you took a leap into having the security of a day job, letting it go, and
I've never been big on that kind of security.
Okay.
I'm big on the internal security, or doing what you love to do.
Okay, that's
And
when you
trusting your instincts. I'm very, very oriented towards that.
Okay, so you trusted yourself even at a young age. You knew.
I think I figured that out when I was really, really young. But I think when you're 15, 16 years old and you tell people that you know exactly what you're going to do,
Most people say.
that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Right, you're only.
I was a very headstrong kid, But I was always, I was a big, I've been 6'5" since I was 12, like the biggest guy in my school, like always. And, it comes with a certain confidence, and I have a lot of self-confidence.
That's great.
Over the years, sometimes it's
Wanes,
a little
waxes
less,
and wanes,
some times are not, real easy sometimes for musicians, especially if you want to be, in the creative realm, you want to be a creative person. But, I ended up getting married very young, and then I had a family, because my first wife had a daughter who was 3 years old, and I adopted her. And
How old were you when you?
I was 22.
You were young when you got married.
And I was, and then I was already working and stuff, but, it wasn't real busy. I had to really, take care of business. So I took every job. I learned to do all the things you need to do in music to be successful.
Such as?
Well, learning to play different styles, different ways, taking every job, no matter what it was. None of this, I'm above all of that. I'm an artist, I don't do that. I was like, look at the calendar, and I'm still like that. Okay, what time is it, and what do I wear, and what does it pay?
Right.
Maybe what does it pay first, and then what do I wear, and what time is it?
Right.
But
So you hustled, and you weren't.
I hustled, exactly.
Yeah.
I hustled, and I networked, and I met everybody, and.
And this is why you were in California. You had your family.
This is all in Los Angeles. And I got, I built up a good reputation there. I was very busy there. I worked, 7 days a week, a lot of afternoons.
So you got.
I mean, if I was off for a day, I'd be like, my career is over, But nothing paid any money. Everything paid $10 or $12, $15, like a club date, which you'd call like a dance job for, like a dance band for older people dancing. I say older people now.
Well, older than us.
Well, at that time, I was pretty young. But, you play like dance music. You used to call them Mickey Mouse bands because it was corny music,
Okay.
two-beat dance music. And later in the 60s, I worked at Disneyland in a dance band there. It was a real Mickey Mouse gig.
Right, Mickey Mouse was involved.
Yeah, the Walt Disney would come by and see if the band sounded good.
Wow. So what did that kind of gig pay you with the Mickey Mouse?
I think my first few years, I made about between $4,000 and $7,000 a year.
Okay.
And the wife and kid, and in the 60s, it was cheap. LA, New York. The first time I went to New York, I could get like a hotel room for a week, 1963, for like $30. Wow. And
times have changed.
And they'd have these places when you would travel to be like musicians' rates. In Las Vegas, there was one where we played. I was playing in Las Vegas with Tony Bennett, and I was staying in a motel that it was like $20 a week, working at Caesar's Palace across the street, making very, pretty good bread.
Right. So you had a family and you lived there for how long?
Well, I lived there until 1969, and though I was on the road traveling great deal of that time, from 63 to 60, the end of 68, I was pretty much taking anything that would take me on the road. Because I basically wanted to move to New York or go someplace else and try to be a creative musician. So I was being more of an all-purpose, commercial musician. And in Los Angeles, the scene was very oriented towards commercial studio work, particularly.
Okay.
Most of my peers were going into that, and some of them were having like great success. For some reason, I didn't want that, the house in the valley and the Mercedes and and all of that. Like, what a knucklehead, But I wanted to play. I figured I'm young, I'm going to play, and I'll eventually, maybe I'll settle down and do something more, not more serious, but more like commercially viable.
Right.
And meanwhile, I was on the road with like really great people, and I was making, in 1968, I was in the best paying jazz-oriented job in the music business, which was the George Shearing Quintet. He was a great blind pianist at that time, very popular. We worked, in 1968, we worked like 10 months out of 12. I made $500 a week, which was like way more than, the more famous jazz groups were paying half of that.
And when you moved here, you moved to where?
I moved to Mount Bethel, Pennsylvania. Well, I came to New York first, and it was kind of surfing New York. I had a sublet in the East Village. I had come to New York to work with the great vibraphone player named Gary Burton. He was very popular, younger jazz, forward jazz band.
Yeah.
And Gary had called me at the end of 1968 when I was still with Shearing and said, I'm thinking about that, wondering if you'd like to join the group. And he had me come to New York and audition.
Was it a quintet or something?
It was a quartet.
A quartet.
And very popular group at that time. He said, you want to join the group and you'll have to move to New York. I was like, great, I want to move to New York. For the first 6 months I commuted between LA and New York, and then in the summer of '69 I brought the family, and we had a sublet in New York in the East Village on 2nd Avenue and 6th Street, which is right where the Fillmore East ended up being.
Yeah.
And that was in 1969. And it was really funny because the guy who owned the apartment was John Nichols, the author, who was the brother-in-law of the bass player in the Gary Burton Quartet. His name's Steve Swallow. And John Nichols had just written The Sterile Cuckoo, and had been picked up by the movies, and he made a lot of money and decided to move to New Mexico. And he had this apartment on in the lower Manhattan, $60 a month. Somebody was telling me the other day, when I first came to New York, I had an apartment for $1 a day. So, well, I had one for $2 a day in 1969.
Not bad.
So we stayed there, but we didn't really groove with New York. We're used to California. I had a house in California. We had a yard. We had grapefruits growing in there. We're in the East Village. It's
no grapefruits.
It's not that happening.
Right.
So I came. I had made a friend who's a very well-known musician in this area, Bob Giroux.
Oh yeah.
Bob Giroux, the creator of Schoolhouse Rock.
Right.
And we had worked together in California. We'd become very good friends. So Bob said, "Why don't you come visit me in Pennsylvania?" So where are you at? And I'm like, Philly, I said, no, it's the Poconos. He led me, literally met me in New York. He led me to the Poconos. We went to his house in Mount Bethel.
Okay.
And on the way, my wife and my kid and I, Lisa, my daughter, was about 10 at that point. I said, wow, this is really nice. We're coming along like, it's Route 80, Route 46, and we're back, the highway wasn't done yet, but I said, wow, this is really nice. I started feeling this kind of relaxed feeling. We got to Bob's house, and we just loved it, of course. We loved Bob already, and we fell in love with his wife and his daughter, who was the same age as my daughter. They became best friends. We moved there a few months later, and the kids went to school together, still best friends,
Wow.
Even now, and they're in their 50s.
That's great.
And Bob and I are still, great friends. He was my children's godfather. And I've been here since. I moved in January of 1970, so this is like 46 years now. Yeah, anyway, so Bob was one of my great heroes and employers and friends and
That's
so
great.
forth. But there was a community, I discovered this community of artists and musicians here in the Poconos. I had like no idea. I didn't even know where it was.
Sort of like Toluca Park.
Zero clue.
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing that people who don't know the area and come to the area find and discover these fascinating people that are creative and live here. You know.
It's a well-kept secret, but it's becoming better known. I sort of hope it doesn't become too well known. Though, there's little property values and all that stuff. That always fluctuates. But, so the first place that I moved into in Mount Bethel, Bob helped me find, because he knew people that were moving out of a rental that they had. And it was a 10-room farmhouse on 130 acres in Mount Bethel, and it was $100 a month. And I immediately became like I was working. I was a rich hippie, and I had like really long hair, and I had a beard down to here. And,
playing in bands.
I was working all the time, and I'm, making way more than $100 a month, and living the life of Riley, literally.
I wish I had a picture. I wish I had a picture of that person that you just described.
There are some pictures from that era, and it's funny because I had a lot of hair and a lot of facial hair, and now I have very little hair.
Right.
That's so it goes.
Right. Yes. So you came out here and made a life for yourself, and became successful in that. You continue to play with well-known artists.
Oh, sure.
You're teaching now, I think you said also.
I've been teaching for years now, since I pretty much got off of the road. After about close to 35, 40 years on the road, I got off really about 15 years ago, and I'm very lucky that I was asked to start teaching at William Patterson University in Wayne, New Jersey.
And you
It's a beautiful, great jazz program there. And I knew the people who were they're all like professional, jazz musicians, well known on the scene. Been teaching there for years, and a wonderful program. And I was just brought in kind of for a semester originally, saying, see how it works out, and I've been there ever since.
Fantastic. So you're here now. You play locally, I understand.
I do.
Where do you play?
I play almost next door on Wednesday nights at the Yards of Ale.
Okay.
And I often play at the Deerhead Inn. Okay. I ran a jam session at the Deerhead Inn for 5 years, and I just stepped down from leadership of that in September. Okay. But I still go and play. In fact, I played last night there. Though I'm not the regular drummer, I'm there. If I'm not doing something else, I'm there, and I'm participating in the hang.
Okay.
Because it's like a jam session. Yes. People come and we interact. It's like old-fashioned thing. I kind of designed it that way, so it'd be sort of like a house party.
So people can come.
Yeah,
they
people
sit
come,
in,
and
they
anybody
can play a couple of songs.
Yeah, anybody who wants to get up and do something can do it. It's almost like an open mic.
Okay.
But it's a jazz-oriented open mic. Though occasionally we get like folk singers or other people who want to do things. And make sure everybody gets to do something. And it's great. It's a great like social night every week. And this at the Yards is all very similar.
Similar concept.
Yeah, a similar band and a similar concept, and we play, and then we take a break, and then people come up and join us, and
nice.
It's good.
Nice.
And then I have my, I do my occasional gigs in New York. So I don't travel so much anymore. It's a little difficult for me. Not particularly for the age, but the circumstances of travel have changed so much since when I was younger. My real road days, when I used to look forward to going on the road and getting on an airplane. It's a lot different now.
Yeah. It's
not really much fun. And of course, after 9/11, things changed really a lot for a traveling person. It's a big hassle.
Much more difficult. Yeah.
And it used to seem like it was sort of a hassle, but it wasn't. It was always fun. A lot of us out there traveling together, and the jazz community, music community is a very, ecumenical community. It's like we all know each other. It's like if I know everybody, and if I don't know somebody, I know somebody who does, who will introduce me to them.
6 degrees of separation.
Or you can just walk up to somebody and say, "Hey, I'm Bill Goodwin, and I'm a friend of so and so." And that's how it works. And immediately you're embraced by the community, which is the original reason that I wanted to be in that community.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I felt like that's who I wanted to be with the people that I wanted to be with.
And you knew that pretty early, it sounds
like. I did. I figured that out. I had a kind of epiphany about the music when I was very young, was at a movie and had a jazz score, and there were a very prominent drum part in that movie, and I knew who the drummer was because I was a fan of his playing. It was a great drummer named Shelly Manne. And the movie was The Man with the Golden Arm with Frank Sinatra, of course, who was, a friend of the family, and the wonderful, wonderful movie. If you like movies about a heroin addict who's, a card dealer, and it was a Nelson Algren novel, real slice of life, really noir thing. But there was this music, the West Coast jazz music in it, and my mom, stick with my mom, she would take us, let us read anything, let us pretty much see anything. He said, it's not gonna hurt you, to know what's happening in the world. And this music came on, it was like the light went off in my head, and I saw my whole future ahead of me. I'm gonna play the drums, I'm gonna travel all over the world, so the whole thing. And I remember telling my mom, I said, oh, that's nice.
She didn't really believe that
she didn't believe that it was gonna work out for me until I got the gig with George Shearing, because that was a really prestige job.
Yeah, but you knew, so you had the courage
I knew,
to stick
and
to
I
that.
trusted
Yeah.
that just,
Do you have a sense of, have you throughout your life, were you raised religious? Was there a spirituality that you?
Well, I was raised without religion,
Okay.
and I actually got real interested in the Bible, and I went to Episcopal school, and I really liked it, and I was in the Boy Scouts, and the minister, the brother of the minister who founded the school, was Episcopal school, was my scoutmaster. And I got to be very friendly with him and his brother, who was the minister. And I got real interested in the church. So I started reading the Bible. And
How old were you?
I was 12, 11, 12. And I started, you got real interested. I have this thing about anything I'm interested in, I get real conversant in it. It's like when I loved baseball,
Study.
I memorized the Encyclopedia of Baseball. I could tell you a lot of stuff about jazz, music history and stuff. Anything I'm interested in, I have a good retention.
Yeah.
Still lately when I can't find my glasses,
There they are, right?
But I was just whatever I liked, I was just on fire about it. So I got real interested, so I got baptized and I joined the church.
Really?
My parents were shocked. It was like, where did we go wrong? Because they were
Very
not
liberal,
they were not
very-
religious.
right,
they were
right.
more, I wouldn't say they were atheists, but they were at very least agnostic.
Yeah.
And it was really funny. And the minister, his name was Dr. Alex Campbell, used to needle my parents. He said, "Oh, Bill's so interested in the church. I think he'll make a great minister someday." And they'd be like, it's like.
What?
So a couple of years later, I discovered jazz, and that was it.
That was the end of the church.
We also moved. We moved to Palm Springs from Los Angeles, where I went to high school.
You think they moved
And,
because of the church?
Well, no.
I'm
It
only
wasn't that,
teasing.
it wasn't
I'm
that.
only teasing.
It wasn't that, but how it worked out for me was then I became much more interested in being a musician than in being an altar boy. Though I was an altar boy. Yeah.
So you left that behind and never looked back.
Well, I've always had an interest in the spirit, the world of the spirit. I'm not a religious person, but I wouldn't say that I'm like a non-believer. I wouldn't classify myself as an atheist.
Okay.
But I'm skeptical. I love mythology, though. And I love stories, and I love mythology, and you never know.
You never know.
I figure, well, I probably shouldn't say that. I figure I'll reconvert on my deathbed, just in case.
You're not alone in that.
Probably not.
All right. So moving forward, you are playing locally now. You spend time teaching at both colleges. If you were to, do you have any, as you're aging, which we all are, do you have any future thoughts about what's next for you? Are there things that you want to do, or are you content to be as you are?
No, I have a plan. And all my kids are grown up, and my grandkids are grown up. I have some young great-grandchildren now. I have 6 of them. And I want to get to know them better because I only know a couple of them. I've only met a couple of them. They live out west. So I hope to, in the next couple of years, hope to get more in touch with them so I'll know them more. I mean, I don't know how long I'm going to last, but I'm in good health.
Good.
And I want to, spend time with them. I have great relationships with my kids. And,
Are there any of them locally?
well, one lives in Arizona, one lives in Colorado, and two of them live in New Jersey, who I often see because where I teach. They live in Montclair.
Oh, okay.
We just recorded Bob DeRoe on his 92nd birthday at the Deer Head. Very excited.
Fantastic.
We were just doing some mixing on that yesterday. And it's great to work with Bob. It's just one of the great thrills of my life. He's a great guy. So doing that, and I have my own group, and I'm doing some work with that either in New York and on the East Coast, and occasionally I'll go a little traveling out west or something, and do some stuff like that. Well, I travel very little, but I'm also playing with I play with a lot of younger musicians. And I may be going to Europe with one of those groups this summer, as long as they give me a business class ticket. And
that's great.
So I'm spending time in the recording studio doing projects, either as a producer or as a player.
Doesn't sound like you're slowing down.
I'm practicing every day.
No, doesn't sound like you're slowing down.
I have slowed way down, and I have slowed down. But I have time to do, kind of do the things that I want to do. It's not so much about the money, or it's always like very much oriented towards making a living, because the family, you find ways to eke it out somehow,
No.
you got to diversify, do all these things. But I've always done musical things, and it's been terrific. I've been very lucky that way. There's a lot of fortuitous circumstance, but also a lot of shaking hands, a lot of networking, a lot of that kind of.
And I'm sure you're good. That helps too. You're
I can
probably
play.
very good.
I can play a little bit.
A little bit.
That does help.
Right, yeah.
That does help.
Yeah.
But I'm still working on it. I'm always going to be a work in progress, I think. And I think that's the way it should be, for anyone who's sort of artistically inclined. I think you should always have some headroom towards, moving forward. And I mean, you have no choice. You're going to get older. You're going to, I'm not going to retire. I have no plans to retire. I don't know what I would do if I retired. They may retire me.
If you were to offer a prescription to a younger audience that may be watching this in terms of how to go forward in their life and some kind of wisdom that you could offer them, anything particular come to mind?
Get up every day and get out of bed and get dressed and start walking. Keep moving.
Be involved.
It's advice that I should take better myself. I like to get up and sit around for 2 hours drinking coffee.
Well,
and
74.
Doing conceptual work, I call it.
Yeah.
My ex-wife used to say, "What are you doing? You're just sitting there." I said, "No, I'm conceiving. I've got ideas."
There you go.
Oh, no, you don't. No, I mean, I think it's pretty simple. I believe you go the simple way possible. But
But be involved. And get active.
Get enough rest, take care of yourself reasonably well. Have fun. Find things to laugh about. Look at the bright side. I'm a real Pollyanna over here.
Sounds good.
But see, young people, I don't know. I mean, I relate to them. I can't say, well, when I was your age. I do say that sometimes when I say, when I was your age, we had the steam engine.
They look at you
but
like.
they see, they would say, really? I didn't know that. Oh, come on, man, I'm kidding you guys, But, there's always something to learn and something to do. And I think that's kind of our duty as human beings, is to try to progress. I mean, there's no way we're really going to go backwards. In truth, we can only go forwards. So, why try to, when you see the current political scene, you see people kind of try to pull us back to, some earlier time, which maybe wasn't that great, no matter what they say. I think we have to go forward.
So
to live in the world, be realistic, but don't be bugged about everything. Find the bright side of it.
An optimism.
The bright side of life. Yeah. Every negative has a positive. Yes, I really am.
It sounds like
an eternal optimist.
Well, it sounds like it served you pretty well, Bill.
It's working so far.
Yeah, it's working so far. So this
that and my antidepressants and
it all works.
Kentucky bourbon.
There you go.